What's up, Wizards? It's Dev. SBMTG, we like it of Magic. And yeah, the camera's out of commission for one day. Don't worry your pretty little head over it. I'll be back so you can look at me very soon. But that's not even why you come. You come to look at spoilers. We can test that theory out. I can just do a video where I just dead blank stare at the camera for 20 minutes. We'll see how many views that gets. But for now, let's do some spoilers. Let's start with some common limited playable cool stuff like Rousing Reed and Library Larcenist. And these are awesome cards beyond just the alliteration angle, but I do like alliteration. Here's Library Larcenist right here. 2 and a blueser for a 1/2-zer. It's a merfolk rogue, so hey, more rogue support, snaps fingers. Whenever Library Larcenist attacks, draw a card. So this is an Ophidian, but it doesn't actually have to deal combat damage to draw the card, which is really pretty cool, especially for a common in limited. The body is not very good for the mana cost, but being able to almost guaranteed replace itself if your opponent doesn't immediately have removal for it is pretty good. So I kind of like this. There's a bunch of stuff in green and blue, I think, that I know in green, that wants you to draw cards in this limited environment. So looks like Simic is relatively strong and getting some decent support for its themes. Same thing goes with Rousing Reed, by the way. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for an aura that enchants a creature. When Rousing Reed enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has flying. So Rousing Reed is a relative rarity in that it's a limited aura that I actually like, right? It draws 2 cards and then discards a card when it ETBs. So as long as you don't get blown out while you're trying to put the aura on the creature, then you at least get some form of card selection, really. I was going to say card advantage, but it's actually card parity in this situation. But drawing 2 cards is very, very powerful. On a 3 mana aura that also grants other bonuses, right? +1/+1 and flying is nothing to sneeze at. I really like that this grants a creature evasion, can sometimes get a big creature through for the win. There's a lot to like about this, and again, just like Larcenist, this works with all the green stuff that wants you to draw cards for further bonuses. So I really like this, and I think that both of these actually are just bread and butter important limited signpost commons. Oh yeah, and by the way, Colossal Dreadmaw's back as well. Got Colossal Dreadmaw, it's a meme at this point, but it's a fine creature in green decks in limited, so yeah, sure. Colossal Dreadmaw, it's back, as usual. There's also Finishing Blow. This is limited removal. You'll play it, but there's also Unsubstantiate. Just go ahead and move on. Honestly, you don't need to know what Finishing Blow does. It's just 5 mana for instant speed, destroy a creature or planeswalker. You'll play it. Unsubstantiate, on the other hand, reprint. It's 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an instant. Return target spell or creature to its owner's hand. Pretty decent card. Now, I'm not actually sure that this can see standard play, but I'm not sure that it can't either. Right? Am I right about that? I mean, Aether Gust sees play in the main deck of even some best of 1 lists, so a card that's similar to it but can hit anything seems decent. Of course, Gust can put stuff on bottom or top of a library, and that's much better, but this is just a much wider range of targets, and you're punished a lot less for putting this in your main deck. So it's a possibility, because Unsubstantiated is pretty much always better than it looks. But you think just because I talked about a decent card that I'm done talking about crap? No, sir or madam. Here's Falcon Adapter right here. 4 mana for a 2/3 human soldier. Whenever it attacks, create a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying that's tapped and attacking. It's bad, folks. That's pretty much all I got to say about that. I mean, in the limited environment, again, this might be a decent uncommon, especially for these Boros decks that apparently want to go very wide in this format. So I can see that in limited, but I mean, that's pretty much all there is to say about the card, and I'm sorry. Let's move on to Griffin, Irie, and Silver Smoke Ghoul. Both of these cards are similar, but I think one is better than the other. Let me put it that way. Griffin Irie is 1 and a white for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, create a 2/2 white Griffin creature token with flying. Not bad, but the problem, I'm going to go ahead and tell you up front that I have with both of these cards, is that gaining 3 life every turn is not as consistent as you think it is most of the time. What I'd like to do is play this on a turn where I've already gained some life. And guarantee that when I play this, I go ahead and get the 2/2 Griffin token that turn. But that's not, like, the easiest thing to do in the world. I mean, I guess you could, like, Oath of Kaya into this on turn 5, get a free 2/2, and that's not the worst thing in the world. Some of these life gain decks have engines set up to where once they get them set up, they can start suddenly gaining a whole bunch of life, right? You get Linden out, or Heliod, or whatever. You get a Sorin down, give all your creatures lifelink, any of those things, and suddenly you can probably proc these cards pretty easily, but they both require a bunch of cards to be on the battlefield all at the same time, so it's not very good against sweepers or even spot removal in some cases, because a lot of the consistent gain your life every turn engines that we have right now are creature based, so again, very susceptible to sweepers and stuff, and there's a lot of those in the format. So I'm just not sure how good Irie is, but as far as Ghoul, I think I like this a little bit better. This is 2 and a black for a 3/1 zombie vampire. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, return Ghoul from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. You can also pay 1 and a black and sack Ghoul to draw a card. So a 3-mana 3/1, really not a great rate. If you don't get it every turn, you don't feel bad about it. You don't have to actually cast it from your hand to get any real investment out of it. You can just discard it, and then once you gain 3 life, you get it back, and it doesn't come back to your hand, it just comes back to the battlefield, which is really, really good value. Again, I just don't feel like you have to proc this as consistently as you do a card like Griffin Irie, which requires, the upfront payment of 2 mana that this doesn't require. Again, you just discard it or something like that. You can mill it into your graveyard somehow, and eventually you'll just get it for free, which I think is much better than a card like Griffin Irie, where you have to spend a turn mana casting it and all that. So, and I haven't even talked about drawing the card, which is very good as well. Let me just throw that out there. Especially on turns where, you've attacked with Silver Smoke Ghoul, and then in your second main phase, you gain 3 life. Well, you might as well sacrifice it, because it's going to come back anyway. I mean, it comes back tapped, so it can't block or anything, but still, in most situations, you might as well sack it. You'll draw the card, right? So it's a card draw engine on not the best body, but if your opponent doesn't have too many creatures, it can attack pretty profitably, and it can trade really easily as well, and then come back. So I just really like recursive creatures like this, and I've probably talked too long about this card, but it's a really interesting card to me. And I think it's much better than Irie in a lot of ways. But speaking of life gain, let's move on to Speaker of the Heavens, Thick Boy right here. Just 1 white mana for a 1/1 human cleric with vigilance and lifelink. Little keyword soup on your 1/1 there. You can tap it to create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying, but you can only activate this ability if you have at least 7 more life than your starting life total, and only time you could cast a sorcery. So that's not bad. Just put it that way. Anyone that's played mono white life gain the last few months, at least since Heliod was released, knows that it's not very hard to get to 27 life. In a lot of cases, it's not hard to get to like the 35 life you need for a Johnny's Ultimate. So 27 life is a piece of cake. There's just, especially like starting probably around turn 4, I'd say. You can likely start tapping this if it's still on the battlefield and if you're not playing against a very aggressive deck. But if you are playing against like Mono Red or something, you've got a pretty good matchup against them, famously. So you're probably in a decent position there regardless. And if this never taps to create an angel, at least it can block and gain you some life. There's that, right? You can replay it with Lurrus and stuff. There are things you can do with this. But again, 27 life, really not too difficult to get to in a lot of situations. And if you can tap this for just 1/4/4, that's really good, because you spent 1 mana on a 4/4 flying lifelink, right? So, or it's 4/4 flying. The angel doesn't lifelink. But if you can tap it for any more than just the 1/4/4, then it's just a ludicrous card. So I really like this. It does, fail against sweepers and whatnot, spot removal and all that. And there's an awful lot of it in the format, but this is one of those situations where dies to removal isn't the best argument, because this might die to removal, but what are they going to do about, your Heliod or your Linden or your million other creatures that you're playing in the deck? Sure, they spin a removal piece on this, but that's a removal piece they can't spin on the 27 other creatures in your deck. So that's at least an argument for it. Oh, you spin a Heartless Act on my 1 mana card. Well, I kind of gained a mana advantage in that situation, so thank you very much. So, and I've got 100 other creatures I'd rather you not Heartless Act than this. So, I don't know, just for the 1 mana investment, there's a lot of keywords on this, and if it ever taps even just once, then it's amazing. But we might as well go ahead and talk about Animal Sanctuary. This is one of the most hyped cards of the day, right? It's a land that taps for colorless, or you can pay 2 and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on target bird, cat, dog, goat, ox, or snake. So it's a Swarm Yard, but it works with other kinds of creatures that Swarm Yard doesn't, and they're really cool. Right? Like, you've seen bird commander decks if you've been playing for more than a couple of years, and obviously there's a lot of cat and dog support in this format right now. There's even like goats and oxes and stuff in this format. There are snake commander decks as well, so this is actually probably going to be a fairly sought-after land that I'd go ahead and get my copies of, especially considering the art is incredible. But I wouldn't want to forget about Watcher of the Spears, would I? This is 2 mana, Azorius colors, for a 2/2 bird wizard with flying. And creature spells with flying you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever another creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, Watcher gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Not bad if you were playing Warden of Evo's Isle in your flying deck. First of all, if that was a mistake, you shouldn't have been doing that. But if you were, then you should replace it with this card, because it's just a much, much better, dare I say strictly better, Watcher of Evo's Isle. And honestly, I'll say it again, those decks were looking for a good 2-drop, even after Skycat Sovereign came into the mix. The deck still kind of would like another 2-drop. So, this just goes directly into those day one. Does it make them good enough? Honestly, I'm still not sure, because these decks need some form of sweeper protection if they're like really going to live. Sweeper protection beyond just Sephara, because Sephara's not enough. So I'm just not sure that this is enough for the Blue-White Flyers deck to be real. It is an amazing card in Limited. I'll throw that out there, but not amazing, but we like Windrakes in Limited. Those are 3 mana 2/2 flyers. This is a 2 mana 2/2 flyer that has a whole bunch of upside. It helps you play your flying bomb quicker and all that. So yeah, it's pretty good. But in Standard, you play this on turn 2, and then turn 3 you play your Empyrean Eagle and you swing for 4, and like all of this is good. All of this is really good. And like maybe turn 4, excuse me, you play, a 2/2 flyer or a 2 mana flyer, and then like 2 1-mana flyers, and suddenly this thing is enormous. So I really like the implications of the card. As a matter of fact, now that I think about it, this reduces cost, so you could play like a bunch of 2 mana flyers on turn 3. You play you can play 3 2 mana flyers on turn 3 after this. Holy crap, that's really quite good. So, this might actually be amazing. Notably, you can't follow up copies of it with more copies of it and reduce the cost, which is kind of lame. But same thing with Skycat Sovereign. This doesn't reduce the cost of Skycat Sovereign and all. There's problems, but it's still a really good card that, again, I think I've probably already talked about too long, but I've made no secret that I like the Azorius Flyers deck, and I'd like to see it succeed. But if we're talking about 2 mana Azorius creatures, I think Niobe is like way better. Steam Speaker is Azorius colors for a 2/1 legendary human cleric with flash. When a Steam Speaker enters the battlefield, you may return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. If you do, you gain life equal to that creature's converted mana cost. You can pay 1, a white, a blue, and tap a Steam Speaker to discard a legendary card and then draw 2 cards. So that's a whole lot of stuff on a 2-drop. They threw flash on there, which is cool. It can save a creature at instant speed from removal or combat or whatever. So all of that seems pretty decent. You just randomly gain some life. So that's pretty cool too. Even if you just gain 1 life for saving a Healer's Hawk or something, at least you got some bonus out of that. Triggers any, whenever you gain life effects and stuff. But this mostly looks like a control-y kind of creature that wants you to play other creatures. Right. It also obviously wants you to play legendaries, and that is where things get a little bit weird, because it wants you to discard legendaries, and I don't know how much you want to discard legendaries. Even if you have a Teferi on the battlefield, you'll usually want to keep the other Teferi in your hand, right? So, but I will say, if you get extra copies of Niobe, then you can discard those to draw 2 cards, which is not bad, right? I mean, just everything that this card does combined makes me think it's almost certainly pushed for Standard play. Even if all it really does is return a Brazen Borrower to your hand, you gain 3 life and you can borrow something else. All at instant speed, by the way. This whole play costs 4 mana. Play Niobe, return Brazen Borrower to your hand, gain 3 life, play Brazen Borrower again, and return something else at instant speed. 4 whole mana for this amazing play that gives you so much tempo. So if for no other reason than that, this is likely to see Standard play. But there's a whole bunch of stuff this can return that has really good ETB triggers, like Charming Prince, Deputy of Detention, Elite Guard Mage. Just the list goes on and on of cool stuff you can do with this. But speaking of legendaries, let's talk about Kaervek, the Spiteful right here. 4 mana, 2 and 2 black for a 3/2 legendary human warlock. Other creatures get -1/-1. This is a good card. This is quite the good card. I've seen some number of people be underwhelmed by this, and I think that's a mistake. This could be in like creature-less control decks as maybe one of your only creatures. And I think it'd be really, really good. Anyone that's ever played against or themselves resolved an Ethereal Absolution knows how good this effect can be. And for 4 mana, you can even ramp into it fairly easily, but for 4 mana, this is busted against a fair number of decks in this format right now. It kills a bunch of creatures in mono red, like Fervent Champion, Scorch Spitter, Anax tokens when they come into play, 10th Street Dodger. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Grim Initiate. There's a whole bunch of mono red stuff that this kills, and hobbles the rest. Like Phoenix of Ash only swings for 1 mana. Like all of that's pretty good. Oh, it kills Rimrock Knights. It kills Runaway Steamkins. It basically makes them unplayable, so that's a cool thing. Robber the Rich only swings for 1. There's just so many cool things this does against mono red, but against Knights it kills Venerable Knights and Fervent Champions, a whole bunch of other stuff too. It kills a bunch of things in mono white decks, and just white X aggro decks. It kills. God, I could go through a whole bunch of cards here, and I will. Screw it. It kills like Hunted Witness, Venerable Knight again. By the way, Loyal Pegasus, if there's like a mono white aggro deck out there, Hazda Marshal, I could go through white cards all day. Edgewall Innkeeper, the tokens that Lovestruck Beast produces, it kills Pelt Collectors if they haven't grown yet and renders them unplayable. Gosh, do we keep going? Yeah, sure. Gutter Bones, this kills a bunch of other creatures in like red-black. This will either kill or severely maim. So, I think I'm making my point here. What have I named? 20 creatures at this point that this outright kills, and a bunch of other creatures that this either hobbles in some way or another, or just completely cuts their power out, right? Like Priest of the Forgotten Gods and Serrated Scorpion and a bunch of other like 1/2s in this format. This effectively, completely cuts out their power stats. So this just does so much. This does so much. It's not a sweeper or anything, but it really does a lot against a lot of decks. How quickly we've forgotten like Goblin Chainwhirler and how good that card was. Because I'm not saying this is a better Goblin Chainwhirler, but it is very comparable to Goblin Chainwhirler. Now, you would all jump on me if I didn't talk about Tulare Crackin, I'm sure. This is 6 mana, 4 and 2 blue for a 4/6 Crackin. And whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1. When you do, you may tap or untap target creatures. So, Verity Circle shenanigans. It's way too cute to actually work. I just want to throw that out. But still, this card is so easy to make infinite combos in Commander with that even I can do it. Right? All you really need is a creature that taps for multiple mana. Pretty much any of them will do, but here's Leafkin Druid because it can do that. And a creature that taps to draw multiple cards, like Arcanus, for instance, which is, I guess, the example I'll use for this. But in any case, just pretty much any creature, like Faber or Elder will work too. Just anything that taps for multiple mana, anything that taps to draw multiple cards, you have gone infinite. Congratulations. All you gotta do is have something out that like deals damage when you draw cards, I guess. That'll probably do it. But also drawing your deck will probably win you the game as well. So make sure you got your Reliquary Tower out and go at it, Hoss. This is a ridiculous card in Commander that I'm sure will lead to a lot of like fun play lines and stuff. And there's even some infinite mana combos or infinite combos with it in Standard. But they're all just way too cute. I'm sure they'll show up on the channel eventually, but don't expect them to show up at the top tables. But up next, let's talk about the other most hyped card of the day for Jank Lords, and that's Brash Taunter right here. 4 and a red for a 1/1 Gobbo with Indestructible. Whenever Brash Taunter is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent. Woo! And you can pay 2 and a red to tap it. And Brash Taunter fights another target creature. Isn't that hilarious? We have a Stuffy doll in Standard, except that it's red. And it can actually just make stuff deal damage to it. It can punish your opponent for having big creatures. It can even fight smaller creatures and kill them some of the time. It can fight a Brazen Borrower, deal 3 damage to your opponent, kill the Borrower. Like, oh, that's pretty decent. Oh, by the way, Kaervek kills Brazen Borrower, I should have mentioned. Oh, Spectral Sailor, Healer's Hawk. You just go on all day with stuff that Kaervek kills, but we're talking about Taunter right now. And I've always loved Stuffy Doll, literally, actually, low-key. I haven't really talked about this on the channel, but it's one of my favorite cards of all time, so super happy to have a Stuffy Doll in Standard, along with all the other stuff in Standard that we have that wants to be dealt damage, by the way. We have a Marauding Raptor, which can deal damage to this when it enters the battlefield, so there's that. And it makes the cost of it less, so that's okay. But we've also got God, what is it? Truefire Captain, Stormwild Caprador. There is a janky Boros deck with all of these cards in it. In Historic, you can like Starve Extinction with a Brash Taunter out and just win the game. You can 20 your opponent. There's some fun things you can do with Taunter in a bunch of different formats, but 5 mana makes it a little bit locked out. And the fact that we have Brazen Borrower and Teferi to bounce this in the format along with Elspeth Conquers Death to take it out probably means that at least for the next like 4 months, we won't be seeing too many shenanigans with this, but I can dream. I can dream. Oh, by the way, here's Glorious Anthem. I'm talking about hype reprints. Just the other day, I was talking about how Mono White needs another Anthem effect, and we got the thing that Anthem effects are named for. So that's pretty decent. You know, in the 3-drop slot, you get Heraldic Banner and this. I was kind of hoping we'd get Banalish Marshal instead, but I'll take Glorious Anthem. You know, if White Weenie's going to be a thing, then it definitely needs, you know, all the 3-mana Anthem effects it can take. I'd take a 2-mana Anthem effect, honestly. But it doesn't look like we're going to get one for straight up just white creatures or White Weenie or whatever. Would have loved it, but whatever. I'll take Anthem. I think this really, really helps out the Weenie decks, almost making sure that they get some sort of +1/+1 to their board effect as early as turn 3, and that's going to be very, very important for those decks' health moving forward. And I'm not saying they shoot up the tier list or anything, but White Weenie is a deck that I've been having a fair amount of success with on the ladder in Arena just in the last like 2 weeks. So I always try to make White Weenie work. I've always been a fan of the deck since I first started playing Magic 25 years ago. I've loved White Weenies, so you know. I've been trying to make that deck work, and it already kind of does on the ladder. A little susceptible to sweepers, but it does, you know, Weenie decks are going to have that issue a lot of the time. But now, with Glorious Anthem, we don't really solve the sweeper problem, but we definitely solve the deal as much damage as quickly as you can problem, which is part of solving the sweeper problem, if I'm honest. But let's look at Discontinuity. This is probably the hottest card of the day. This is very likely the one people are talking about the most. This is 6 mana, 3 and 3 blue for an instant. As long as it's just your turn, this spell costs 4 mana less to cast. And it just ends the turn. In the turn, in case you've never seen this ability before, you exile all spells and abilities from the stack, including this card. The player whose turn it is discards down to their maximum hand size, damage wears off, and this turn and until end of turn effects end. So this is a good card. Quite the good card. It's not a straight up time walk, take an extra turn kind of effect like some people are saying it is, because your opponent will still get to untap, but on their upkeep you just cast Discontinuity and whoops, it's my turn again. So they did get to untap. And that kind of sucks. But a 6 mana time walk at instant speed is playable, probably. Even if your opponent gets to untap, that's likely playable. But this also exiles, you know, it can also be a counter spell. Let me throw that out there. It can be, if you need it to be, it can be a 6 mana counter spell. And do note that on your turn, this is not a 6 mana counterspell. It's actually a much, much cheaper counterspell. It's a 2 mana counterspell on your turn, which might actually matter a great deal of the time. So there's that. The card gets much better when 3 Fairy rotates out of the format, and you can actually cast it on your opponent's turn. But as long as you have to cast it on your turn, it's not bad. For just 2 mana, countering something is going to be really important some of the time. So I like that about it too. It can exile, you know, Wilderness Reclamation triggers off of the stack at the end of the turn. There's just a lot that this does amazingly. You know, if your opponent goes to like pop their Fabled Passage, like, whoops, nope, Discontinuity, son. You don't get your land. I just get to go. So, like, there's a lot of really cool little wrinkles with this card, but I'm actually probably not as excited about it as like a million other people are. But that's probably on me, to be honest, because the card does look extremely good. Like, I'm not going to take that away from it, because almost take an extra turn for 6 mana at instant speed that can also counter spells and also, by the way, do other things is a really flexible, diverse, versatile card that'll probably end up seeing play. I just really want to see what it does. I don't want you to take my seeming lack of excitement as me thinking this card is bad, because again, I think the card has a lot to do and a lot that it will do in coming months. But I have a hard time feeling excited about it, because this card looks very much not fun to play against. But the final card of the day is Terror of the Peaks. This is 5 mana, 3 and 2 red for a 5/4 dragon with flying. Spells your opponents cast that target Terror of the Peaks cost an additional 3 life to cast. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. Now, the reason that I have put this card at the end of the video is to illustrate a few points. First of all, I feel like this illustrates that sometimes the difference between playability and relative unplayability is just one word on a card. You know, the way this is templated, it's just spells your opponents cast, and not abilities as well, like it usually is in this wording. You know, if it were also abilities, this card would at least have a little bit more protection from Teferi and Elspeth Conquers Death. But while those cards are in the format, this card is far less playable. That said, just a few months from now, those cards will rotate, but a few months is longer than it sounds. I said this on Twitter earlier, but I'll reiterate it here. 3-4 months is as long as we've been in quarantine. It's an entire summer vacation. 3 months is a very long time, especially in the arena age, where, you know, I used to play Magic a few times a week, you know, 2-3 times a week. Not counting F&M or whatever, I'd play a few games of Magic, right? That was my Magic life. But now, because of Arena, I play 3 hours of Arena a day at least, if not more. So, you know, sometimes I play 6 hours of Arena a day if I'm testing certain decks out or whatever for the channel. So that's really extended the time period that 3 or 4 months actually is. So I'm just throwing that out there. Teferi and Elspeth Conquers Death are cards that just completely crush this, and they'll be in the format longer than you think. And they're cards that a lot of decks play. And no, it's not the Dies to Doomblade argument, because these decks will play like 8 copies of the relevant Doomblade in question, right? 4 Teferi, 4 Elspeth Conquers Death. So they're just almost always going to have an answer to this card without having to actually pay any life. That said, even if your opponent has to pay life in their control deck to take care of this, they probably will. I don't really see them having that much of a problem paying 3 life, unless this is at the very top end of an aggro deck that's already dealt them a whole bunch of damage. I want to like this card a lot, but the other thing I think it kind of illustrates is that these kind of fair Magic cards like this that don't really do anything until the turn after they're cast just aren't as good as they used to be, right? You know, like in this day and age, creatures really need to generate some actual value in the ETB, and this might generate 3 life worth of value, but would you pay 5 mana for a lightning bolt to the face? In most cases, the answer is no. So I'm just not too sure about this card, because again, not generating real immediate value can be an issue. That said, you can play like Planeswalkers that generate tokens, right? And then play this and then just start proccing your Planeswalkers. So, you know, that could be a thing, right? I could see doing that. But still, for the most part, this isn't going to generate value when it comes into play. And you have to wait a whole turn cycle for it to start generating value. And you have to have creatures in your hand to actually cast to generate that value. So you have to resolve them as well. So again, this is just a fair Magic card, but we're in a day and age where fair doesn't quite cut it. You know, 10 years ago when M11 was printed, when Baneslayer was first printed, this card would have been a terror. Sort of. Baneslayer would have actually kept it in check, and may actually do so. when rotation happens, Baneslayer might be an answer to this card, if this card is real. But right now, in this day and age, I'm not sure that fair is good enough in most cases. And Wizards does seem to be making an effort in this set, from what I can tell, to get back to fair Magic in some ways. And I really applaud that, but we won't be back to it for a few months. We'll have to see. And even then, when rotation happens, we're still in a format with like Throne of Eldraine, a fairly broken set. But most of the truly broken cards from that set have been banned at this point, so whatever. But all that is to say that I'm not sure this card sees play right now, but Pandemonium, remember the video I did right before Core Set season started, where I was like, man, can you imagine if they reprinted Pandemonium? Well, they kind of did, just on a 5-mana body. So I'm going to be trying to play with this up until rotation. I just highly doubt that it's going to do the work I want it to, because I'm excited about Pandemonium being back, right? I just, as an honest content creator, I have to evaluate these cards objectively rather than subjectively. And the Timmy side of me is saying, I love this card a lot, but the other sort of, you know, the part of me that thinks I have sort of a duty to tell you whether cards are good or bad outside of a vacuum tells me that this card is probably not as good as a lot of people want to judge it as, because we do have a fair amount of answers to it that don't even require life in this format right now that are extremely popular. So I'm not too sure that the card is truly playable at the moment. Let me put it that way. I wish it were, but I highly doubt that it is, sadly. But that's it for this Friday. at the beginning of June. What is today's date? Oh my god, it's June 12th. The middle of June, I should have said. Really getting through this month. Jeez. But anyway, they might give us a break on spoilers this weekend. I'm not actually sure. They usually do that. Sometimes they trickle a few out. If they do, I'll be back with those sometime either Saturday or Sunday. I'm also thinking, so I've had a few people tell me to do stuff like this. I'm also thinking of either putting it on this channel or starting another channel to do my predictions for WWE's Backlash pay-per-view this weekend. I'm really considering doing that. Let me know if you'd be interested in predictions or a review of that show after it happens. But I'm really interested in doing predictions for these WWE pay-per-views before they happen. But I might put that on another channel. I may do that. Start a channel just for predicting pay-per-views. But in any case, it's a fun thing I was thinking about doing. And I'm always down to work more, so... But anyway, that's the video for now. Let me know how you felt about all these and your favorite Tulare Crackin combos down there in the comments section. And for that matter, your favorite Brash Taunter combos, because boy, did they give us some Jank Lord combo fodder today. But they also gave us some cool, commander stuff like Animal Sanctuary, some cool stuff to, speculate on, like Discontinuity and Speaker of the Heavens. So there's some really cool stuff today. Oh, Niobe, Kaervek, whose Torch I've played many times, but I don't think I've ever actually played the other legendary version of Kaervek, so I'm happy to see I'm happy to be able to finally play with the card whose Torch I've used so many times in the past in like 1996. In any case, a lot of cool stuff today. Let me know how you felt about it. Do all the YouTube stuff, like the videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, check out the Patreon link in the description down there. $1 a month is all it takes to vote on what decks we do first for Core Set 2021 Standard Season. And yeah, check out TCG Player. First link down there if you want to pre-order any of this mess. If you do so through that link, I get paid as well for that. So I get a little kickback, so help out you dude. But anyway, that's all I got for now. I'll see y'all later with more spoilers and possibly, maybe, some wrestling content if enough people tell me to do it. But anyway, I'm done for now. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.